For the past 20 years, I've enjoyed a lot of trips to PortAventura World in Salou, Spain. Outside of the United Kingdom, it's a theme park that I have visited more than anywhere else. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing some of my tips for how to get the best out of your time at PortAventura. So hello, I'm Scott. You're watching Your Experience Guide. If you do enjoy this video as you're watching through, please hit that like button. It's a little thumbs up below. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and of course, please leave us a comment. So my first tip for PortAventura is to arrive before the advertised park opening time. Generally speaking, PortAventura will open their main theme park from 10 AM, but usually the gates onto their car park and the gates into the main walkway up to their theme park entrances will open sometime between 9:15 and 9:30 AM. Arriving at PortAventura before the advertised opening time, in my opinion, is an essential thing to do to get the best out of your day at this theme park resort. Now, it's worth me mentioning at this point that they have changed things over the last 18 months, whereas now Ferrari Land no longer opens at the same time as the main park. So the main park, PortAventura Park, will generally open from 10 AM, whereas these days Ferrari Land doesn't open until 4 PM, which gives you a chance to enjoy both of these theme parks on the same day. By arriving at the theme park resort before 10 AM, it will give you the chance to get through PortAventura's security bag checks early before the parks open, and then it will give you time to have a look at the Woody Woodpecker fountain, take a selfie in front of the PortAventura sign, and then get in what I would describe as the PortAventura Scrum just before they let everybody go towards the ticket scanners. Now, the reason I call it the PortAventura Scrum is because whether you're the first person there or the last person there, there is a lot of people packed into a tight space waiting for PortAventura to open their ticket scanners into the main park. Ticket scanning into the park can be really slow, and this is why I think it's essential to be in that PortAventura Scrum and at the park before they open the ticket scanners, so you can be somewhere near the front of the queue in terms of you can be one of the first people that scans your ticket, gets into the park, and then you have a choice of where you're going, rather than being right at the back of a big queue to scan your ticket, and by the time you're in the park, people have already filled out the queues. There's nothing worse than getting to a theme park 30 minutes, 60 minutes after they've just opened and all of the queues are already rammed full of people. So if you can be one of the first 100, 200 through the ticket scanners, it will help your day massively. Once you're inside the PortAventura Park, I always think it's essential to have a plan and don't be a sheep. Don't follow everybody who goes onto Furious Bacco first. Going to Furious Bacco first does seem like the obvious thing to do. It's right near the park entrance in the Mediterranean area. You'll walk into the park, you'll probably see it testing, but if anything, I'd say it's the worst possible thing you can do when you get into PortAventura, because it always has such a lot of people going to it first. You can't see how long the queue line is until you're actually in the queue line building. It might look quiet from the outside, but once you're in the main queue, you might find there's hundreds, if not thousands of people already in that queue, and you might be like, oh no, what have I done now? I'm stuck in this queue with all these other people. And quite often, Furious Bacco is a little bit slow to get going in the morning. You will see it testing, but they don't always get people straight on it from park opening. So this is what I would do. If I was there with my son, who is 6, I would walk past Furious Bacco and keep to the right and head towards the Polynesia and China area of the park. This will lead you to the Sesame Street area of the theme park, which is an incredible area for young families. And the good thing about this area is most of the rides do open between 10 and 10:30 AM, including Tammy Tammy, which is the little roller coaster in this area. The way we've done it on recent visits is to go to Tammy Tammy first. It tends to be walk on for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Get to it, get on it, make the most of that no queue, and you've already got that ticked off. It does only have the one train, so if that queue line does build up, then it will take a while. But if you can get on it straight away, then you can start concentrating on the other rides in that area of the park. I should probably know this, given how often I've visited the park, but I don't know the name of all the rides in the Sesame Street area. But right close to Tammy Tammy is a little car ride, which is well themed, so that one is always open from 10 o'clock as well. And then nearby, you've got Coco Piloto, which opens from 10:30 a.m. This one is awful to queue for if you don't get to it straight away. So if you do want to do that one, it's the monorail that runs all around the Sesame Street area. If you want to get on that one as a family, I would recommend being in the queue for that about 10:15 after you've got on Tammy Tammy and maybe the car ride nearby. Get to that one early, beat the queue line, and then you can move on to the other stuff in that area. So if you're looking to do the big rides and not so much stuff that's in Sesame Street, as you've walked past Furious Bacco, because I still don't think you should do Furious Bacco first, whether you're a family group or a thrill seeker group. So walk past Furious Bacco, but instead of going right towards Polynesia and China, stick to the left, head towards the far west area, and make your way straight to Uncharted, the new roller coaster that opened last year at PortAventura, because this does not move a queue. The thing with Uncharted is, if you are heading to that from the main entrance of the park, you are never going to be the first one there, because PortAventura also have hotel guest entrances, including Hotel Gold River, which is the Western themed hotel. Now the entrance to the park from that hotel is literally next door to the Uncharted ride building. So anyone that comes through the park that way is going to get to the ride first. However, Uncharted does not have great capacity, it does not move a queue very quickly, so therefore I would recommend going in the single rider queue and not the main queue. We've done this now a couple of times since this roller coaster opened, and we found we've got on it really quickly using the single rider queue around park opening time. However, if you join the main queue, you're likely to be queuing around an hour straight away, and that might eat into a lot of the time you've got in the park, especially on a busy day, when by the time you've been on Uncharted, everything else will have picked up queues. But if you can get on it early using the single rider queue, it gives you the opportunity to move away from that and to other stuff before the crowds all spread around the park. So once you've done Uncharted, knowing where to suggest heading to next entirely depends on the staggered opening policies at the park, because if it's one of those days where Stampeder isn't opening until 12 o'clock, then there's no point waiting for it after Uncharted. You might as well walk past it, walk towards Tomahawk, see if that's open. If that's open with a short queue, it's probably worth jumping on that one before making your way around to the rest of the park. However, if you've come off of Uncharted and Stampeder has opened earlier than 12 o'clock and is already open, or is opening within like 15 minutes of the time that it is after you've been Uncharted, then it's maybe worth waiting around and doing that one next. Working on the assumption though that Stampeder is still on a staggered opening, I didn't actually check this the last time I was in the park, so I'm just going to assume that it is still on the 12 o'clock staggered openings like it has been the last couple of years. I would make my way around the park, maybe do Tomahawk, definitely do Hurricane Condor, the drop tower. Again, low capacity ride, doesn't move a queue very quickly, so that one is always worth doing as soon as you possibly can, especially when so many people are occupied with Furious Bacco at the front of the park. Once you've done Hurricane Condor, if you decide to go on it, then you will of course be making your way around towards El Diablo, Dragon Khan and Shambala. Now the thing with El Diablo is, that's not a ride that I would be worried about jumping on straight away, because what I find with that is, it probably moves a queue better than any other roller coaster in the park. It's generally on 2 trains, sometimes on 3 trains. They do shift the trains out really quickly, they keep the queue moving, and even with FastPass being sometimes oversold, that one really does shift its queue line. So I'd probably walk past that one and head straight over to Dragon Khan, try and do that one as early as possible, try and do Shambhala as early as possible, and from there you can look at the queue boards, which have all been updated now. There's finally got nice, fancy electronic queue boards instead of the old scrolling numbers they used to have next to the ride name, so it's a lot better for keeping an eye on the queue times, and you can work out the best route around the park from there. But the main thing to take away from this is, don't do Furious Bacco straight away, because you will pretty much be following everyone else, and it will take a lot of time out of your day from the off. Head to Uncharted first if you can, if you're a thrill seeker that is. make use of the single rider queue and get on it nice and quickly. If you're a family, tick off as much of the Sesame Street area as possible, as early on as possible, and it will help you on the way with everything else during the day. So moving on, in my opinion, PortAventura is not a one-day park. If you're looking to just do roller coasters there and nothing else, none of the other attractions, then maybe you can push to it being a one day at the park. Whereas if you want to get the full experience in terms of doing the roller coasters a couple of times, doing the flat rides, going on the water rides, seeing the shows, taking in the atmosphere, taking in the theming, seeing everything else that's on offer, then I would recommend at least 2 days at PortAventura. Quite often, I will visit from Friday to Monday, and even then, I don't feel like 2 full days is enough at the park. But I really do enjoy checking out all the different stuff at the park and not just doing the roller coasters there. And that takes me nicely onto my next point. If you're at PortAventura for more than 1 day, then I fully recommend checking out some of the shows around the theme park. The shows at PortAventura are included in your admission fee, so it's not like something that you've got to pay an upcharge to go and watch them. It's probably been about 12 years since I first discovered some of the shows at PortAventura, when I realised that actually this park is not just about coming here and going on all the roller coasters. There is actually a little bit more to it. And having checked out some of those shows back then, it's something I've always done ever since I've gone to PortAventura since then. They're a nice way to break out of the intense sunshine when it is really hot there. Also, another good thing with some of the shows at PortAventura is whilst you're watching live entertainment, you can order hot food or a beer or a soft drink. So you can do something that you would maybe just have to stand in a queue to do anyway, but you're doing it whilst you're being entertained with a really good show. And sometimes waiting for food and drink in PortAventura can take absolutely ages. So actually doing it whilst you're watching live entertainment is a really good idea. At the end of every day at PortAventura, there is the PortAventura Parade, which is always a decent way to end the day at PortAventura. Now sometimes on the later closing times, to follow the parade, there is the Lake Show, which is always a really impressive thing to watch. So overall, I do recommend taking the time to check out some of the shows at PortAventura. So moving on to the next point, and that is the subject of getting onto Shambala. Now the reason I'm talking about this and using this as an actual tip for the park is because quite often in the PortAventura vlogs that I put on or other places on social media, I will sometimes be asked, how did you get on with getting on Shambala? Now don't take that as an offence because quite clearly I'm a big guy, I'm tall and I'm carrying some weight. And Shambala is not the easiest ride to get on if you're carrying a little bit of weight. Now to be fair, I've seen people who are not carrying as much weight as me struggle to get on it because of their thighs. Now for whatever reason, Shambala seems to have different sort of restrictions on where the clamshell lap bar sits compared to on very similar rides like Mako, Silver Star or other B&M hyper coasters that I've been on. For whatever reason, Shambala's lap bar restraint basically has to be crushing your thighs for you to get on it, which is a bit of a problem for me because I do have big thighs. So the way I get around this is basically have nothing in my pockets that can restrict the lap bar coming down as far as the ride attendants need it to come down. Again, this isn't a problem when I go on something like Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. It has the exact same train in terms of the restraint style. The seats are in a slightly different formation, but as far as the restraints go, they're in the exact same style as Shambala. They can be a little bit loose, they can be like this far off your leg, whereas Shambala, your leg might be here and they want the lap bar here. So it's just something to bear in mind. And the way that I get around this is simply have nothing in my pockets, whether that be my phone, my wallet, keys, whatever. I always make sure that all of my stuff either goes in a backpack or in a locker so that they're not on the ride, not in my pockets, and that lap bar can come down wherever the ride staff want to put it, basically. And I think probably the most obvious thing to talk about is actually getting to PortAventura. Now there's many different options for having a holiday in Salou and going to PortAventura. Now the best option, and it is an option that is always possible from the UK between April and October, is flying to the airport Reyes. Reyes Airport is probably 20-25 minutes away from PortAventura, about the same distance away from Salou. So getting a taxi there, getting a bus or hiring a car is really quick to do, and you will be in Salou and at PortAventura in no time whatsoever. Now the only issue with this is sometimes flying to Reyes can actually be extortionate, like we're talking £200-300 a person here. So if that's the case, and you really want to go to PortAventura though, it's always worth checking out what it's like in terms of pricing flying to Barcelona. Barcelona is around 90 minutes away from Salou and PortAventura. However, sometimes it can be significantly cheaper than flying to Reyes, to the point where even once you've booked return tickets to Barcelona and booked a transfer or a car hire from Barcelona, it can actually be cheaper sometimes than just flying direct to Reyes. We did do a travel vlog in terms of flying from Manchester to Barcelona last year, which I will link somewhere up here in the top of the screen. I would always personally prefer to fly to Reyes, but if it's going to be 300 or 400 quid, then I will always look at Barcelona. It's actually quite shameful that I'm going to say this, but I've never actually stayed in the hotels at PortAventura. I've never stayed on site. Now I'm planning on changing that this year. However, with that comes quite a lot of experience of staying in Salou and being near PortAventura but not actually on site. A place that I will always recommend to stay in Salou did actually used to be called the Regenti Aragon. It's now for some reason called the NUM, N-U-M Hotel. I don't know why they rebranded to that. However, I have stayed there this year and it is still just as nice as it always is. The staff are great, the rooms are great, the prices are always decent, and it's in a good location. You're not right bang in this touristy area, so it's quite quiet. There's not loads of noise outside the hotel. It's only a 10-minute walk from the beach, 20-minute walk to McDonald's, and there's a taxi rank right next to the hotel. So I'll put the details for that hotel in the description. I must stress at this point that they have not asked me to mention this. I have stayed there every year that I've been to Salou since 2012, which is every year except for 2020. It's a great hotel, but I'm not affiliated to them anyway. I obviously have to say that, but it's just somewhere that I've had great experiences, so it's somewhere I would recommend in Salou. And finally, if you are visiting PortAventura and Ferrari Land for a couple of days and you don't have a season pass which entitles you to get into the park for 1 day free, then I would recommend buying your tickets directly through PortAventura on their website, because they usually have multi-day tickets where you can get 2 days entry into the main park, 1 day into Ferrari Land, and it's usually very discounted compared to what you would pay at the entrance of the park. Personally, I have an annual pass for PortAventura, very similar to the one at Blackpool, where it gives you entitlement to actually go to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, Europa Park, Leesburg, and a couple of other parks, Efteling as well. So for me, it's really worth having because of how often I go over to PortAventura every year. But if you don't have a season pass, then I do recommend checking out the multi-day tickets on their website because they're usually well priced. I could quite gladly talk about PortAventura for days. However, I think this video is quite long enough at this point. If you do have any questions about anything I've mentioned or any other questions about PortAventura, please let me know in the comments section below. I will be happy to answer any questions about the park or the channel or anything else in the comments section below. I always reply to all the comments, good or bad, on our videos, and I really do appreciate the support. So once again, if you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It's a little thumbs up below. Please subscribe, please comment. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.